For this experiment here, I've tried to make a Medusa. The AI came up with this image here, which is quite nice. I then worked with another image to try and make that different. I ended up photoshopping the two images together and cropping it. Reason I did this is because, again, I don't trust that the AI is not breaking copyright. And once again, I will cite the example of Shepard Fairey and the Obama Hope posters. Just because something is rendered differently doesn't mean it's not breaking copyright. So I've got my photoshopped black and white version, which I have cropped and printed out. And then with my pencil, corrected a little bit of the anatomy, added snakes to headless snakes, I moved it around a bit, and next I'm going to just trace it. Put down some tracing paper, get some ink, and I'm going to ink this with a few minor changes here and there, but it is going to be based on this AI. I'm sure those who are into AI are probably wondering what the hell am I doing here, because I'm kind of doing what most of them are skipping over. The whole idea of AI is that you don't have to do this grunt work. I'm doing it as a way of thinking, of working out in my head how I could use AI, how I could not use AI, and what the future is going to be for traditional artists. For some traditional artists, there won't really be a marked difference, although I think there will be some sort of impact of AI. And I think it might actually be a positive one. AI could be a good thing. For some digital artists, it's an absolute nightmare. Because AI is actually doing what a lot of the general public think that digital artists do. And there's always been a little bit of a divide between digital art and traditional art. AI is going to make that divide even further apart. So by tracing this image, I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. In a lot of ways, it's a little bit like copying a photograph. I am enjoying bits of this because I enjoy inking. Inking gives me pleasure. Just to be able to relax and just ink something. Is this mine or is it the AI's? It feels like a collaboration. I feel like I'm a fairly competent inker with 40 years of experience behind me. Even so, I just don't seem to be able to ink it exactly. I just want to make little changes. I just want to put my own stamp on this. As an artist, I don't seem to be able to help myself. And so this rendering is a very personal thing. In comic books where you've got a penciler and an inker, the penciler does the pencils, the inker comes in, and it is really the inker's responsibility to make that look good. If there's any faults or anything can be improved, it is the inker's responsibility to make that better. In the future, there may not be inkers. There may just be a single artist and AI. But it could be AI just does all the inks, the pencils, the finishing off. So I guess people will lose jobs. But, when people lose jobs, other jobs often open up too. But as I keep saying, it's not quite ethical if you can type in a living artist's name into the prompts. I don't see that as being ethical. That artist, every time his name is used, should get paid a little bit. If it was a musician, they would. I often hear the argument that the AI is just doing what artists do, that artists will copy other artists. Well, this is an argument that is usually put forward by those who are not artists, who don't quite understand. When I first saw AI, on the surface I thought, yeah, that's kind of what it's doing. But an artist might copy another artist, but then he copies another and another and another and another. And she or he might get there and end up being influenced by 20 or 30 different artists until you've got such a unique combination that is nothing like any of the original artists. And if AI just did from before the 20th century, there is so many artists it could use that are copyright free, that could come up with so many unique combinations that they don't have to use living artists. They don't have to use their copyright material to make their AIs. Just have to look at the pre-Raphaelites. There's beautiful art there. Renaissance, the Rococo period. You want something over the top. It's all there in art history. You don't need to steal the work of living artists. So here's something that I believe AI is actually taking away. Here's what I think is lost with people who are using AI. What is lost is the time taken to learn a trade, the time it takes to do this, and the joy of doing that. Some people like it when they're given things. Some people like to earn things. Sometimes when you work hard at something and you've developed a skill and you get to use that skill and you enjoy that skill, and that skill is what you live for, and you practice that skill every day and you sharpen that skill, it is like the ultimate work satisfaction. Whereas if somehow you're magically given that skill, I think it diminishes what we are as artists. There are those artists out there, traditional artists, they'll just get there and they'll lightbox or trace something and then just render it perfect, kind of similar to what I'm doing here. And they will do photorealistic work, and it's always sort of looks like a photograph, and it kind of hides a lot of the style. It's not the sort of way I like working. Like what I'm doing today, tracing, is not something that I would normally do unless I was tracing my own artwork. So here's a line of art that's going to go out of business: pet portraits. You can now take a photograph of your pet, put them through AI, print it out, put it on your wall. A lot of pet artists, pet portrait painters are going to go out of business. But what did they used to do? The pet portrait artist would take a photograph of the animal, trace it up, and then just paint over the tracing. Very similar to what I'm doing here. So one of the great things about AI is it's going to really make us question who and what we are as artists. As I pop the snakes on their hair here, I'm using absolutely no reference material whatsoever. What I am using is my experience. Almost every week of my life for the last 30 years I've handled snakes. Very rare that I go through a day without seeing snakes, because I have snakes in my studios and I've always kept snakes. So I'm in contact with snakes on a daily basis. Probably the only time that I probably haven't is if they're in hibernation and I don't want to wake them up for a week. But even then I'll check on them to make sure they're okay. So I have experienced snakes, I've drawn snakes, sketched snakes, painted with snakes. Right now I am just drawing out of my head, and I'm sure they're not completely accurate. If it's out of my head and I'm not copying a photograph, there's bound to be errors, and that's okay. That's my style. Of course, I would classify style as where you get it wrong but can somehow smooth it over and make it look okay anyway, because you have the skill to do that. Also, if you're working traditional and not digital, there's no Control Z. You can't go back a step. If you make a mistake, you've got to make something of that mistake, or put that mistake in shadow or something, and that's another set of problem solving skills too. Creativity, if you want to define that, it is solving problems with your imagination, using your imagination to solve problems. And as I draw and paint over this, I'm using my imagination. As I draw and paint this, there are lots of decisions, a lot of decision making, and lots of changes. So the end result, is this my art? Kind of is. Legally, I think it's my art because I changed it so much, put it through Photoshop, changed the pose. I have rendered it completely different. I've filtered it out so much, it's gone so far from the source material, and a lot of it's based on my memory of snakes, that I feel this is an original piece. Do I like it? I'm not sure. I'd have to think about it. Am I happy with the end result? It's okay, but probably not what I'll do. This is probably not how I'm going to use AI. This was just an experiment to see whether this is one way I might use AI. If this was a job, somebody wanted a quick sketch of this, could knock this out in a few hours, yeah, possibly. But that's not the way I operate. I am now at a stage in my art career where I just draw whatever I want to draw. You don't like it, you don't buy it. So I'm going to continue doing a few more experiments with AI mixed with traditional art, because I do believe that AI has a place in traditional 2D art. And so I'm running these experiments to try and determine in my own mind where that's going to be. How is it going to be a tool which is going to be an advantage to traditional artists? Because the camera has helped traditional art, digital has helped traditional art, and I'm sure AI will at some stage also help traditional art. Let me know what you think in the comments section.